Ironheart is the worst Marvel show ever made. Morally rancid, creatively contrived, unprofessionally strung together, fitfully paced, socio-culturally preening, with a queef maelstrom of trite dialogue, muddled stakes, second-rate set pieces, and bottom-of-the-barrel CW network-level bullshit, featuring a heroine forged in the algorithmic furnace of modern identity media, her terrible decisions chalked up as the cost of genius, when in reality she's just a reprehensible individual. I suffered through it on your guys' behalf.
I am exhausted from living up to your expectations.
The interesting irony is that this show is supposedly progressive and current, and yet exists in something of a time warp. Its inception was around 2021 in a wholly different cultural climate. The ground has shifted somewhat under the show's feet. Shows like Echo and Miss Marvel have come and gone, with a pattern of low viewership and a prevailing awareness that the envisioned modern audience hasn't materialized.
No shit.
Funnily enough, even the usual high-strung defenders have shifted down a gear from "it's great and it deserves recognition, it just had the legs meanly cut out from under it by malicious Dubros," to "okay, maybe it wasn't the greatest thing ever, but the Dubros suck as well for laying into it."
I'm disappointed in your species.
The main issue is the moral emptiness. If a character comes up from nothing and is denied opportunities through subconscious or overt bias, despite their burgeoning talent, then that would be solid ground for a rule-breaking maverick anti-hero who subverts the norms. But in Ironheart, the protagonist, Riri Williams, has been awarded a coveted all-expenses Tony Stark scholarship to MIT and has somehow squandered all the exceptional time, resources, and goodwill, flagrantly flouting the rules and undermining fairness in the entire system, on the grounds she doesn't have access to the millions of dollars she feels is necessary for her dreams, and ends up being kicked out. Never is it raised that she doesn't need to self-finance an entire project, rather that she could, in time-honored tradition, attract wealthy investors from the tech sector to finance projects based on theoretical breakthroughs, demonstrated specs, or by starting with smaller-scale breakthrough projects, developing a reputation for innovation, and then pitching and promoting her larger suit idea to investors, still well before her 21st birthday. No, a feeling of being stymied by the system, and some vague notion that her suit could be used by first responders and others, and have major societal value, a notion rigged up and then discarded multiple times in the first few episodes, means she forfeits her integrity and abandons her moral compass within 2 minutes of being propositioned by some shady criminal head honcho. And that's it. Riri is now attached to a criminal gang. What might otherwise be seen as morally dodgy becomes a coded assertion of defiance and self-definition. The cultural logic is that if opportunity is narrow, confidence must be maximal. The whole thing is morally bankrupt and kinda gross.
He's out of line, but he's right.
Parker, the leader of the gang, gives them a pep talk saying, "You lived your lives waiting to be seen, to be acknowledged for your greatness, but the money above us will never notice us till we force them." The moral emptiness here doesn't even frame Riri as an anti-hero, she's just awful. The vague idea that they are Robin Hood types who, though keeping vast amounts of illicit cash for themselves, are tenuously advocating for the little guy, the neighborhoods exploited by greedy corporates. And Riri contends with the moral dimension of this with a few tense frowns and twitches. There is then the pseudo-Ocean's 11 intro of a heist squad, led by the somewhat dubious Parker. You might ask, why is it okay for the morally ambiguous actual Ocean's 11 crew to commit crimes? Well, they did it with panache and inventiveness, and without having to punch, hurl across desks, break the bones, brutally maim, and fling blades into the flesh of security guards who are just doing their jobs, as happens over and over in this morally debauched show. This super degenerate crew is presented as endearing, cute, with high school-like emotional characteristics. It's a configuration I would call soft alt. Another example would be the crew in Dustborn. Diverse, tattooed, indie light, brash, and with all the modern vernacular, but with an extremely benign core, a slight found family vibe. It's all very flaky and kind of PG-13. Because this is current-day entertainment, conceived, storyboarded, and shot over the last couple of years, it is of course teeming and spilling over with walking tropes. Slug, a trans hacker extraordinaire, is of course referred to as they. and after saying they wouldn't figuratively toot their own horn about their illicit activities, goes on to add, toot toot.
Cringe.
Riri's stepsister Natalie has died in a traumatic drive-by, and one of the most retardedly painful, stupid plot constructions I've ever had the toe-curlingly horrendous dilemma of either persevering with watching or self-lobotomizing with whatever vaguely sharp object is to hand in order to alleviate the suffering imposed by creatives, whose frontal lobes have been turned to grey-bloated mush by wine and barbiturates. Natalie, the stepsister, is inadvertently conjured up as a fully fledged AI, using brain scanning technology with a self-aware, highly empathic, sassy, and autonomously reasoning and highly emotional identity, indistinguishable from the deceased original girl. When Natalie the AI is placed in Riri's laptop in the AI equivalent of a holding cell, there are moments of such stupefying cringe you wish the world would swallow you up. The actress, in a corner of the screen, speculates to an empty room about her predicament, and you feel the cumulative, mordant anguish of 100 generations of storytellers, stretching back unbroken to Homer, all of them rolling in their graves, causing rapid twitches and spikes in a meta-Richter scale in response to the narrative storytelling seismic carnage. The Heist involves disrupting a vast and intricate hyper-modern tunnel development for cars, on the grounds the corporate Karen behind the project has disrupted local communities, though how an underground transit system could do so is left ambiguous. It is vaguely intended to evoke the highway system constructions that in many instances carved up minority neighborhoods in the 50s and 60s. But this gigantic tunnel grid is meters underground, would be super convenient for anyone with a set of wheels who lives there, and wouldn't alter the character of the area due to its 99% undergroundness. Not even allowing for the project being presumably state-sanctioned, and given the ludicrous scale of the state-of-the-art subterranean system, would have brought hundreds, even thousands of good-paying contractor jobs to the community, revitalizing it with security and wealth creation. But what we get is one of the team mentioning the woman's name, and Riri saying, nah, screw her. So that's all the background and judicious moral justification we as the audience need. Riri Williams is not a good character. With barely any moral quandaries or reflection, she accepts becoming a criminal, all in aid of getting vast sums of cash. As early as her comic book origin, she tells a teacher she wants to be a scientist, then speculates aloud that the white teacher probably expected her to say nurse or teacher. It's a pointed moment that seeks to racialize presumed bias, but also reveals a kind of projected superiority. The teacher says nothing stereotypical. Riri invents the prejudice, then triumphs over it. That moment encapsulates her worldview. Opposition is presumed, and her identity is permanent rebuttal.
Oh, I've been internalizing a really complicated situation in my head.
Countless individuals from underrepresented backgrounds navigated adversity with grace, earned respect without posturing, and built influence not by declaring their genius, but by letting their hard work speak for itself. To frame Riri's self-importance as inherently empowering is to erase those whose strength lies not in performative defiance, but in resilience, patience, and the ability to uplift others as they rise. I could build 1,000 other things and no one would care, Riri laments, which is a garbage attitude disconnected from reality. I see you're fed up with mediocre folks taking your spot, Parker flatters her. Mediocre institutions rejecting your genius. And he disparages the red tape, delays, strings attached that Riri has had or might have to endure, as if these were further legitimate incentives to drift into rank criminality. The notion that exceptional talent or adverse circumstances can justify operating in moral gray zones is a seductive but dangerous form of moral relativism. The idea that brilliance or hardship entitles one to sidestep the rules that bind lesser mortals. In Ironheart, Riri Williams is often portrayed as navigating a hostile world, but the show does little to suggest she's persevering towards anything particularly noble. More often, her motives seem rooted in self-interest, personal validation, and financial gain. She's driven less by vision than by the thrill of proving herself and securing her place among the elite. That's not resilience, that's ambition with a glossy, identity-framed justification. To portray this as aspirational is to mistake surface-level defiance for moral substance. There is undeniably a cultural precedent, especially in music and film, for granting morally dubious male figures a kind of symbolic pass when their behavior is framed as survivalist or born of hardship. In hip-hop, the get-rich-or-die-trying ethos is often romanticized. where coming up in the hood, breaking rules, and embracing ruthless ambition are recoded not as ethical failings, but as authenticity. But Riri isn't operating in a world where moral compromise is raw and unfiltered. She's in a Disney Plus show, where the sanitized aesthetics of youth empowerment and corporate virtue signaling clash awkwardly with the traits she's given. Her hardened attitude and self-justifying ego don't come across as authentic or earned. They feel scripted, frictionless, approved. Finally, Riri asks Parker, "Are we Ocean's 11 or The Sopranos?" To which there is no real answer, followed shortly by Riri declaring, "I'm only doing this because I have to." There are some truly fantastical rhetorical constructions in this piece of shit. Flaunting the money they have made from disrupting the underground transit network, one character says, "Once you've strut in one money shower, you've strut in them all." While Riri's prospective love interest, a young guy who embodies moral probity in a show otherwise without it, says, "Catch you in your feels, huh? I don't mean that completely colloquially." I'll try that again. I don't mean that completely colloquially, not at all pejoratively. I'm going to try one more time. "Catch you in the feels, huh? I don't mean that completely colloquially, not at all pejoratively." What the fuck are you talking about? I know one of the writers has carved out a career as an urban poet and probably fought to have this included, but it is odd, grammatically, rhetorically, expressively, rhythmically, and tonally. Shut up. There are hilariously dopey interludes. AI Natalie talks to Riri's mum, who, initially, and quite understandably, taken aback by what seems like an astral projection of a slain teen girl, begins interacting with her, but who then settled down to a heart-to-heart on the couch, which is patently ridiculous. Slug, as a computer whiz, is shown typing in rapid rattling runs, with nails the length of the Rancor's claws, which is laugh-out-loud funny, especially when the actor is feigning typing at 10,000 words a minute. Riri, needing specialized parts for her suit, tracks down a black market owner of such goods. Alden Ehrenreich Rich, known for the ill-fated Han Solo film, is introduced to us as a faltering, self-conscious suburban pushover, perfectly teeing up a character reveal along the same lines as Gus Fring in Breaking Bad, an unassuming, polite, fast food franchise manager who at the ideal dramatic moment lets slip the benign facade and we discover someone more scheming, genteel, and insidious. This would have worked nicely, even lent a sharper edge to the show. Instead, it turns out Han Solo is, just a drippy, unassertive, neurotic headache of a white male character. The only other white male character with more than a few lines, besides the skinny, gawky, retentive, and snippy white male college professor who nearly gets blown up by one of Riri's maverick experiments at the beginning of the show. And it's so stupid, so redundant, so obvious. The former setup would have been better narratively, rather than having to bear through this tedious guy, who ridiculously has a whole mini installation of top-of-the-line obscure tech gear beneath a silo in the countryside. Han Solo then asked Riri, "If not to help people, then why build the suit?" To which she replies, "Because I could," all but negating the original moral premise that by bypassing traditional societal expectations, i.e. the rules, i.e. the law, she could create a suit first and foremost for the greater good. Late in the third episode, there is a botched reveal where Joe explains he is the son of Jeff Bridges' character in Iron Man, delivered with him flourishing a picture of Bridges for a weird second or two. Then some rushed sentiments about the burden of family and legacy. And it's all done with both jarring abruptness and no particular resonance or meaning, especially since this character of Joe is still new to us. It's all very odd and bordering on shambolic in its coordination and writing. At one point, in this terrible show, Parker sums up Riri's circumstances by saying, "If that makes you bad, who cares?" And in terms of moral scope, I was sitting there watching, thinking the exact same fucking thing.